Well, Razorback fans, fall camp is officially underway. Sam Pittman met with the media as well as a few of the players. What did they have to say? And also, what am I looking for this fall camp for the Razorback football team? It's all coming up on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors. Appreciate everybody listening in and watching in on this beautiful day here in the great state of Arkansas. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Thursday as fall camp officially underway for Razorback football, which I know everybody's just so pumped up and excited about. They're so excited they could pee. But, you know, it's a hot one out there for one. Like, the weather is, listen, it's late July, early August in Arkansas. Like, it's usually kind of what goes along with it is it usually gets a little bit warm. But still, it was good to kind of get a little bit out of practice and see what Sam Pittman had to say in the opening of it and hear from the players like Cam Ball and Talon Green as well as Hudson Clark, the no-fly zone. But the thing is that like fall camp, I talked a little bit about it earlier this week, and I wanted to save it until fall camp actually officially got underway. In saying that, listen, fall camp, as far as what you can get out of it or what it will mean and how it translates into the season, is always yet to be determined. I mean, how many times, folks, have we had fall camps in Razorback land where you've been like, okay, I was told about this, and it is not even close to being true once the season happened. It happens pretty much every single year, just to be honest. And so I can understand it gets a little frustrating. I can totally understand. But the thing is that there's still stuff that you can take from it. There is still things that you can look at and try to, say, okay, well, maybe this is how it's going to be. This is how it's going to be. But how I like to do it is take it out from the year before. So if the year before was terrible, then look for things to be the opposite of what you saw last year, or at least in some cases be different from what you saw last year, and maybe give you a little bit of a good indication. Or if something was really good last year, or the season was really good last year, which we know it wasn't, but then you kind of look to say, all right, so how does this look compared to what we saw last year? That's really the only thing that I utilize if I'm ever watching practice or whatnot, trying to take that into consideration and make that work. So last year was bad, so what could be different? That's what I look for. And when I started going through kind of what I remember last year, I didn't go to every single fall camp because I was living in Little Rock at the time, and it's a little tough to get up each and every day to Fayetteville and be able to check it out. But the practices and the scrimmages that I was able to see, I look back upon it and see where it's at now. I am more of the type where if I see the offensive line doing overly good or the defensive line doing overly good, like, to me, that's been a problem, and that is a problem. Because anytime that you have, or at least in the reasons that we've had from previous years, when you saw one side of the ball really dominating or really being much better than the other side, it was, it usually ended up being a bad deal. Because last year, it always felt like the D-line was really doing well against the offensive line. And I remember I kept thinking, just because of the optimism in my mind, I was like, okay, well, maybe it's just mainly because of, the D-line's just that much improved and that much deeper, and you got a lot of new faces on the offensive line. But it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine because it's Sam Pittman, offensive line. Totally works. Well, we all know that wasn't the case. So I'd like to see the lines, the trench play, be as balanced as possible. There's going to be some days where the offensive line is better than the defensive line. There's going to be some days where the defensive line is better than the offensive line. There's going to be some plays where one is better than the other. But as long as it's just not over the top, overwhelming, constant, just getting it on one side, that's usually a good indication of, kind of where everything stands. Because if that ends up being the case this fall, and we see whether it's the offense or the defensive side being extremely dominant on the lines, it's going to be bad for the other side of it. So that's what I want to see. I want to see some consistency there, at least in the balance, and of having some consistency there in the trench play. What I also want to see is I want to see the offense, particularly Taylon Green in the quarterback position, be extremely focused and be extremely confident and be extremely successful. This is something that I'm not saying it from my own perspective. When I talk to Ryan Mallett, rest in peace, when I talk to Tyler Wilson, friends of mine that were playing under Bobby Petrino and looking at it from back when other players, even on the defensive side, played for Bobby Petrino, one of the things that they always brought up is in his practices, he always wanted his quarterbacks to have the most confidence humanly possible. And if that meant getting mad at or getting upset or getting frustrated with a defensive player because they made a great play against the quarterback, then that was going to be the case. Petrino is always about having a confident quarterback. And what better way to get a quarterback ready for the games and to be confident in themselves than throughout practices, making sure that they're the ones that's having the success, they're the ones that's being set up the most for success because it is the most important position on the field. And then going out and when they walk into that game, they're like, okay, well, I know I got this. I know I got this. I know I can do this. It's about the confidence level. And so we know that Taylon Green's QB1, and it's not even close. Like, it's not a race. It's not a competition. He's the guy. But you also have some newness to him. I mean, he has never played in a level like the SEC. He hasn't. This is going to be, without a question, the toughest competition that he's ever going to be going up against. But in hindsight, he's also never played with a team in college as talented as he has around him at Arkansas. Now, I'm not saying Arkansas is just, championship caliber talented, but when it comes to the level of competition, when it comes to the size, the speed, the abilities, he's playing with about as good as anybody that he's ever had. And so the more you can get him confidence and having it to where he's going through his progressions right, he's going after the guys in whether it's the leadership role or if things are doing with his legs, because that's another thing too is we don't even really get to see what he can do with his legs because he's not allowed to get hit, and that's okay. Nobody needs to see him get hit. He doesn't need to be hit. He needs to just do Taylon Green things and be healthy. What's the thing? The best ability is availability. Yeah, do that. Like, use your legs in the game when it's warranted, but just worry about going out and working on your arm and working on the passing game too. But another thing I always love seeing, and I'm going to give a shout out in this particular case from Anthony Christensen, who took this video. This was an incredible catch and play by Tyrone Broden. You got to check this out. It's hard to get much better than this. Take a look. Okay, so that is a one-handed catch by Tyrone Broden. Like that's an NFL caliber catch. And also, I don't know, did it just start happening? Like, when did all this one-handed stuff start coming about? I felt like Odell or OBJ was like the first one to really start doing one-handers, and now it seems like so many wide receivers are capable of this. It's not saying it's still not impressive, because it truly is really impressive. But when I see that, I'm like, geez, it's so common. But I love seeing the highlight plays in practices too. It's better in the games, but what it does give you is it gives you an idea of just how freakishly athletic somebody like a Tyrone Broden is. Because we talked yesterday about how he was one of those guys that had the speed level. He was at that 22 level speed, as Ben Souders talked about, one of the fastest players, or the tier of fast players there on the team. And when he's able to go out there and make one-handed catches, and not to mention that he's 6'7", like, those are the types of things where you're like, okay, yes, it's practice. Yes, it's, first day of spring ball or fall camp, and they don't have pads on or anything like that. But there is only a handful of players that can do plays like that or be comfortable and confident enough to make plays like that. And so if he is capable of something like that, then he's going to be a great target for Arkansas and for Taylon Green. That, like, we can talk about positions all day long and what looks good and what doesn't. But, folks, I can't tell you how interested I am in the wide receiver position, even though it's pretty much the same players that we saw last year. I mean, truly, it really is the same group, same exact group. But the reason they intrigue me so much is because I think that I thought last year they were just as talented as they are this year. But they just weren't set up for success. Well, if Petrino's going to be setting up a quarterback for success, dadgum well he's setting up those wide receivers for success. And the fact that they are some of the tallest wide receivers, maybe even the tallest wide receiver group in the SEC, is fascinating. Because, like, you got Tyrone Brown 6'7". You got Andrew Armstrong 6'4", 6'5". Isaac TeSlaa 6'4". I mean, you got big targets out there, not including the tight end like Luke has. You got size. And, you know, we're always comparing things to when Petrino was here originally. I look back when Petrino was the head coach at Arkansas, and other than, like, Greg Childs was 6'5", and I believe Kobe Hamilton was about 6'3", 6'2", 6'3". But besides that, I mean, the other wide receivers that had so much success at Arkansas were actually shorter guys. Like, Jarius Wright was 5'11", 6 foot. Joe Adams, 6 foot. Even the tight end position, you had DJ Williams, who's about 6'2", 6'3", and Chris Gregg was about 6'2", 6'3". Not to say that those are small guys by any stretch, but you get what I'm saying. Like, you have literally, you're going to be throwing to guys that are 6'4" and above the entire time, except for Isaiah Satania, who's still like 6'1". So you got some options there. But I'm wanting to see how those wide receivers continue to develop, to continue to gain their confidence, and continue to have those explosive playmaking abilities like Tyrone Broden just showed here. Because to me, that's one of the most exciting things that you could ever see. All right, we're going to get into another little fun segment of some of the newcomers that I'm looking forward to the most and checking out this fall camp. So we'll get into that next here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Stay with us. All right, Razorback fans, I got to tell you about the Gametime app. We know that here in Arkansas land, we're always looking for events to go to. Sometimes they're concerts, sometimes they're sporting events, sometimes they're comedy shows. No matter what it is, we got to have a ticket to go there. And with Gametime, it's going to make it the easiest and best way possible to ever accommodate you when it comes to your ticket buying. Because not only are they have an easy-to-use app that you can download for free, but they have some of the best type of benefits, like a last-minute deal where you can save up to 60% off last minute for sports, for concerts, for comedy, for theater events. They have flash deals where you can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats for the games or the events. They have the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. They also have Gametime ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So get after it and start getting your tickets the right way, the cheapest way, and also the most effective and best way with the Gametime app. Take the guesswork out of buying all those tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your very first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. There's a lot of newcomers that are on the team this year. And it's still something that I'm having to get used to personally, because you have not only the newcomers that are high school recruits that are true freshmen, but the amount of transfers. I mean, Arkansas had 22 transfers come into the program this year. 22. All right? They had 18 high school players commit. So you're just talking about how everything's changed. And I was looking at it, and I was like, okay, so when I'm looking at freshmen, we all know it's going to be a little bit more difficult for them to just step in and start for an SEC program. And some of them, are not going to be starting for the SEC program right away. But before we get into the transfers, because I think that's going to be the most of them, are there any true freshmen that I'll be most interested in seeing how they do, or if they find a way to be a part of the team and be, big time for them? Well, the few things that I look at is, like, I look at Braylon Russell, for instance, like the freshman running back. He's, it's crazy. He was 6'1", 230 pounds coming out of high school. And now he's like 6'1", 260 pounds. I mean, the dude is built like a truck. And so we'll see if his weight, kind of fluctuates. Maybe if he loses a couple pounds or maybe slims up a little bit. But, he was a big get for the Razorbacks. And there's something about endearing about a big-bodied running back. Like, if you just feel like, okay, hey, we need a yard. Let's put in this mamma jamma in there and just have him just plow the road. I'm hoping that can be somebody like a Braylon Russell. I mean, there's always been players like that that's had that. I think Broderick Green was a sizable running back, a big running back. And I remember Rocket Sanders even last year, the weight class and everything that he was in was great, but he just didn't play because he was hurt all the time. And so, you've had some examples of guys that were like big, able-bodied running backs, but there's just something special if you're able to get somebody that's like, hey, in short yard situation, go out there and get him. And you know what's crazy? In 2011, this is something I was actually looking up. In 2011, when Bobby Petrino was the head coach, people may have forgotten, but like, it's just like it was so long ago. Cody Walker. Y'all remember Cody Walker? The dude was here for like 8 years. But he was a guy that in that 2011 season as a true freshman, he was that short yardage running back where if they needed to if it was first and goal from the 1, hand it to him and let him go get in. He was successful. Now, a lot of it has to do with the offensive line and the push, of course, but he was successful. I would love to see Braylon Russell be that type of player. I don't know how much he's going to play, but just because of the size and the capability, I would love to see if he got that type of success and that type of run. There's a few other guys that may end up playing too. Again, it's just kind of up in the air right now, and figuring some things out. Because I mean, your 4 stars that you're looking at from that you were on the team or that you got out of the high school class: Charlie Collins, the defensive lineman out of Little Rock; Selman Bridges, the cornerback out of Lake Belton and Temple, Texas. Which I know, hey, listen, you can always use secondary players too. About Bradley Shaw, the linebacker from Hoover. Those are going to be guys that really contribute. We'll see, but. Yeah, so that's kind of where it's at right now. But when you go to the transfers, and this is really where a lot of them are going to start taking place, some of them you already got excited about because of them, coming in and having a lot of the excitement surrounding them, like because they were highly regarded in the transfer portal and whatnot. But you think about it, like your entire offensive line, or at least half your offensive line, came out of the transfer portal. You have Keyshawn Blackstock, who came out of the portal, who was from Michigan State. You have Fernando Carmona, who I'm really excited about, by the way, and I think he's going to be really good this year. He came in there. And then also Addison Nichols from Tennessee. So you have 3 offensive linemen that are going to be starting on this year's team that are from the transfer portal. And who knows, maybe even more. But that to me is going to be the biggest difference, because last year you were so freaking bad on the offensive line. Like, I've never seen anything like it. It was almost, and I hate to even say this, folks, but it was almost worse than what we saw any of the position groups under Chad Morris do. Like, that's how bad the O-line was, because it didn't make any sense. They couldn't protect anybody. They couldn't open up holes. And we're talking about even against, like, Kent State, where the defensive linemen were smaller and, like, weaker and everything. They couldn't even get push on those guys. And I was like, how does that happen? How does it get to that point? Well, you don't have to worry about it anymore. That's last year. This is this year. They went out and they got some guys to replace it and hopefully not have that happen again. So that was a big part of it too. But you think about Xavion Sori. He's the one that I almost like in a way feels sorry for, and maybe not feeling sorry for him is not the right way of putting it. But he's walking into a situation where it's kind of like, all right, dude, you got to go and be the guy. Got to be the man. And you lost all your linebackers last year. And he was a 5-star player coming out of high school. He was at Georgia, and in the transfer portal, he came out actually as a 4-star player. So, he's going to play. I think he's going to start, but how much of an expectation is he going to have? Is he going to be living up to that 4 or 5-star expectation? Who knows? But Jordan Anthony, the transfer from Texas A&M. I know Bobby Petrino really liked him. He's another, he's kind of the smaller wide receiver. Maybe the guys we were talking about, he's 5'10", 160. He's got a lot of speed. I know Anton Junkaj is a guy that people have been really high on from the transfer portal too. And, as far as his grading out as a defensive lineman, he could be a guy that benefits and gets going here in the fall. So we can go through all this, but here's the thing. It's like, I didn't want to use the answer of Taylon Green because it's just low-hanging fruit. Like the quarterback is always going to be the most interesting and the most intriguing position on the field, especially offensively, no matter what. Every single time, no matter what, he's always going to be the most interesting. So I'm not even to that point. Oh, and I forgot Nico Slaughter, by the way, Tennessee. I think that dude's going to be a beast. I think he's going to be a huge factor in the secondary. So these guys got speed, and he already made some impressions in the spring, so can't forget about him. But the guy that I'm really most excited about, and really I haven't heard much from him. We haven't heard, other than just, how he plays and the type of player he is. I'm excited about Jaquindon Jackson, the running back. If there's ever anybody that I'm excited about, it's him. He's the transfer from Utah. He's 6'2", 233 pounds. And he is just built up. In fact, I love how If you go like on 24/7 Sports and you see some of the ways that they put them in together and all that, like you start reading and you're like, wait a minute, this seems weird. Yeah, because he was a quarterback when he was in high school and he shifted to running back. And he's out of Duncanville, Texas. I feel like there's a few players Arkansas is known out of Duncanville, Texas. Shout out Anthony Black. But he's heading in as a 22-year-old. And when we got to see him in fall camp, you could just tell. You're like, all right, this guy, this was a nice get. Rocket Sanders left. A.J. Green left. You had running back. You had Rashad Dominion coming back. But, you had this true freshman. But you got to find somebody that's like your guy. And Jaquindon Jackson's the one. To me, he's the one that I think is going to be such a difference maker on this team. And when we get to our bolder predictions that we come out with, once we get closer to the season itself, I'm going to be looking at him to be not only a great running back for Arkansas, but I bet you he runs for 1,000 yards. Maybe I shouldn't say bet because I don't bet. Who bets, right? But I'm just telling you, I got the feeling. If it's a Bobby Petrino offense and if the offensive line is as improved as what we think and what we hope that they are, I see no reason why Jaquindon Jackson is not a 1,000-yard rusher this year. I think he's that good. I think he has that much talent, and I can't wait to see him. So I got to pick one. I'm going to go with Jaquindon Jackson. It's not a bad person to go along with. Possible changes coming for the SEC basketball schedule. We'll talk about that here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Stay with us. Passion, drive, and patience, Razorback fans. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 number one ride or die parts, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. So with all the car parts that you need at the prices that you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home those huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, so final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I know that basketball's still a ways away, but I saw this from John Rothstein that he retweeted it. And this was something I meant to actually talk about the past couple of days, but just had other things going on. But this is something I'm really hopeful for that the SEC actually does. And I kind of wish they would have done it already. But they are discussing going from 18 to 20 SEC games during the 2025-2026 season. So not this year, but it would be the next year. There's no timetable on the official announcement. It says, this is according to College Hoops Today with John Rothstein. It says, while discussions have taken place, one source stressed that it was too early to tell if the SEC would stay at 18 league games or shift to 20 a year from now. The SEC, which of course has expanded to 16 teams with the additions of Oklahoma and Texas, currently play 18 league games and is the only power conference that does not play 20 times during league play, as the ACC, Big 12, Big 10, and Big East all play 20 conference games. That right there is exactly why I don't understand, and I never have understood why the SEC does not play 20 games. Folks, I understand sometimes decisions need to go through a lot of processes. I do. I really understand that. Decisions have to be made not on a whim. You got to get everybody on board. You got to make everybody feel good about it, all that and whatnot. But this is a no-brainer to me. This is something that's not even should be a question. Because in the SEC, even though there's going to be some bad teams, Missouri went 0-18 for crying out loud last year. But even though there's going to be bad teams, that's like 20 games that are going to help you out with your net ranking no matter what. Because the net ranking, at least at this point in time, is what makes the difference in the NCAA tournament teams and what really gets them to their seed. You want to have as many games as those as possible. Sometimes they're harder to schedule. Sometimes they're hard to schedule at home, whatever it may be. So how about this? You make more money by playing more teams in your own conference, and you do it 20 times. Who's going to say no to that? Which coach is going to say no to that? Why would you not want to play teams in your league 20 times? Because that's going to still give you plenty of games to schedule in the non-conference. It's still going to be able to give you some warm-up gimme wins or maybe some exhibition games or some NIT invitationals, preseason tournaments, whatever it is. you're still going to have plenty of reasons to have those and plenty of things to do with that. So I just don't understand why this is a thing. And it's kind of the same thing with football. Go to 9 games. I know it's a little bit more complicated with football because you're only playing 12 games compared to, I don't even know, like 30 some odd games in the regular season most other teams play, so it leaves you open for a little maneuverability. But that's the toughest thing about football is going from 8 games to 9 games, which I'm in favor of too. Like, I'd love to have that. But to look at it from the different perspective of, okay, if you go to that many games, what happens to those other non-conference big teams that you're facing? Like, for instance, Arkansas in 2025. Like, people, I don't know if you realize this. Like, Arkansas's got a tough, it's going to be in the SEC. It's going to be tough no matter what. But, like, Arkansas plays Memphis, Arkansas State, and Notre Dame in the non-conference slate. Imagine if they go to 9 games. You got to kick somebody off that schedule. Who's it going to be? It ain't going to be Notre Dame. It probably is not going to be Arkansas State because that is the Game of War Memorial, and it's the last one. Maybe Memphis? I mean, I don't know, but that's just a tough grow. That's a tough go at it. That's a tough schedule. So that's what's going to be tougher. But in basketball, it shouldn't be difficult. Just do it. There's no hesitation. Just knock it out. Go for it. Make some money. And especially when you're kind of behind in that, where the ACC, Big 12, Big 10, and Big East all play 20. I think it works out for them. Pretty sure that those are pretty good conferences that have had some championship teams. I think that works out. So these are just type of the decisions that always just frustrate me because I always feel like you're overthinking it. Stop overthinking it. Just do it. Just do it. And make sure Arkansas and Kentucky play each other twice. That's important. Appreciate everybody listening in to the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at John Nabors Show for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you then.